Hello, I'm Gaurav Sharma from Hitbullseye.com, and welcome to this lecture in which we shall cover the evolution and the salient features of our Indian Constitution. First of all, why did we need a constitution? Why did we even need a Constituent Assembly? Uh, we shall in this lecture we shall also study what are the different constituents of it, and even if we needed one Constituent Assembly, what were the goals that it wanted to achieve. So let's first begin with the historical background. The demand for a Constituent Assembly first time was originated in 1934. This demand was done by Mr. M.N. Roy. He was the president of representative of Communist Party of India at the time, and he also took part in the Cominterns, World Cominterns at the time. And later on in 1935, Congress also officially demanded it. Although their demand was accepted by the British in principle, but as such, it wasn't uh, manifested in their actions. So in August offer of 1940, that is 8th August, they did wanted to accept it, but at the same time they awarded a dominion status to India, which was not acceptable to us. And finally, in 1946, the cabinet mission led to the formation of a constituent assembly via elections. In the cabinet mission, there were three members: A.V. Alexander, Sir Stafford Cripps, and Pentheus. These three members were responsible for creation of a constituent assembly. Now, a constituent assembly, the elections to a constituent assembly took place, in which the total strength was 389, in which 296 were to be elected through the provinces, that is, which will control under the under the control of the British, and the 93 were nominated by the princely states. And of course, these were never selected, never nominated, because the princely states did not want to take part in the formation of a constituent assembly. So they were indirectly elected by the provincial assemblies. The president of our constituent assembly was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, vice president was Shri H.C. Mukherjee, and the drafting committee was headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now this day was chosen, 26 January was chosen, because historically this date is very important, because in 1930, 26 January 1930, we had celebrated our first Independence Day. That is, in the previous year, in 1929, the Congress had passed a resolution declaring Purna Swaraj as its goal, and that it shall celebrate this day, 26 January, as India's Independence Day. So this date was historically chosen, and that is the reason we commenced our constitution on this day. And now this day is celebrated as Republic Day. Now initially the Indian Constitution contained 395 articles and 8 schedules. And also the national flag of India was adopted on 22nd July 1947. Whereas the national anthem and the national anthem Jan Gan Man by Shri Rabindranath Tagore, and national song Vande Mataram by Shri Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, these both were adopted on 24th January 1950. Now let's go through some of the salient features of Indian Constitution. Yes, our Indian Constitution is the lengthiest constitution, and of course it has a very unique blend of rigidity and flexibility. We shall study this point later on under the Article 365, that is the amendment to the Constitution of India. And of course, we have a parliamentary form of government. Now, parliamentary form of government means that there is a parliament which is responsible for running the government of India. We had taken some of these provisions from the British Constitution, or the British form of government. Now, Indian government structure is a quasi-federal structure in nature. Now, what do we understand by quasi-federal? See, federalism is in which there is this separation of powers between the center or the union and the state governments. But in India, we do have federalism, but there is a very strong center. Now, that means that we have a quasi-federal structure. That is, the state is independent, but it is not so independent that it can infringe on the unity and integrity of India. The separation of powers there are different organs of our government. There is judiciary, there is executive, and there is legislature. Now the constitution defines the power of all these three organs so as to not create a balance or imbalance between the governance, and so that there is transparency and accountability in the government, and also there is integrated judiciary. Now with respect to legislature or executive, these both are divided as union at the union level or a union government and at state levels. But in the case of integrated judiciary, there is an apex court that is called Supreme Court of India, and there are subordinate courts like Supreme Court, then High Court, then session courts or district courts. So there is an integrated form of Indian judiciary in which the head is Supreme Court, and then there are other subordinate courts. And then there are certain important provisions like fundamental rights, fundamental duties, and directive principles of state policy. We shall cover all this in a separate lecture. The reason why Indian government is so bulky or so large is because we try to inculcate all the best things that were available at the time. Similarly, like there were different sources from which we had taken the best of all, and the Government of India Act of 1935 forms the bulk of our Indian Constitution. There is administrative details, there are emergency provisions which were taken or borrowed from there. There was a federal scheme, the office of governor were also adopted from there, and the judiciary also. Now from the British Constitution we adopted the parliamentary form of government. Now in India the parliament composes of Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, and the President of India. Now in the British Constitution the head of the state is the Queen, whereas in India we have the President. Now also we have two houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Now this feature is called as bicameralism. Now with respect to the British Constitution, there is a House of Lords and a House of Commons. This we have taken from the British Constitution. Now similarly there is the cabinet and the rule of law. Further, the US Constitution also acts as a source of our Constitution. The fundamental rights were adopted from the US Constitution. Also, the process of impeachment of the president was adopted from the US Constitution, as well as the post of vice president. Now vice president in Indian case, he or she is the ex officio chairperson of Rajya Sabha. There are very similarity between them, and also vice president does not do anything, but he can replace the president if there is a vacancy in the post of on this chair of president, similar to that of India. And the Irish Constitution, we have taken the DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy, and the methods of election of the president. From USSR or the Soviet Union, we have adopted fundamental duties. Now these are the major sources from where the Indian Constitution borrows certain very, very important provisions. Now this brings us to the Preamble of India. Now what is a preamble? Preamble has been called as a guiding light of our Constitution. It has also been called as an ID card of our Indian Constitution. Now preamble as such consists of the goals or the targets that the Constitution strives to achieve. Now previously it was under contention that whether preamble is a part of Indian Constitution or not. Under the KV Keshwananda Bharti case, it said that the preamble is a part of Constitution. Now there are certain important terms which are present in the preamble. First of all, that India, we the people of India, the Indian is a sovereign, social, secular, democratic republic. That India is a sovereign republic. It is not bound by anything, any other country, and it is free to take its own decision, decide its own path. It's a socialist, that we have a welfare orientation. We will pursue a path in which there is an equality, there is an egalitarian processes are taken, and important provisions are provided in the Constitution with this regard. There shall be no state religion. That means there shall be India shall be a secular state, and of course elected representative means that it shall be a democratic republic. Now, justice, there is social, economic, and political justice. That is, the Constitution of India shall strive towards creating an environment in which there is social justice, economic justice, as well as political justice. And also, the Constitution shall ensure that there is liberty of thought, expression, belief, and faith and worship. That means there is religious freedom of sorts. Further, the Indian Constitution has strived to create an environment in which there is equality of status and opportunity. That is, every citizen of India, each and every citizen of India, shall strive towards and is given opportunity to become somebody. That is, if someone has certain aspirations, he shall be provided an equality of opportunity and to promote democracy. And there, of course, there shall be fraternity, that is brotherhood between the Indian citizens, and unity and integrity of India. So these are the major provisions of the preamble. Now, initially there are 22 parts of Indian Constitution. There are 12 schedules. Initially there were 8, saying 4 more were added, and there are 395 articles, but the absolute number has increased, but the total number, that is the serial number, still remains 395, and the amendment to constitutions are 100. We shall cover the schedules of Indian Constitution in a separate lecture. Now, these are the 3 parts, the first, second, and third part of Indian Constitution. The first part states that India is a union versus India as a territory of India, right? So it provides a process of creation of new states, renaming new states, and it also provides for a schedule 1, in which all the names of states and union territories are also provided. The second part deals with the citizenship of India, and the third part consists of fundamental rights, which we have covered in a separate lecture. Now, one of the salient features of Indian Constitution is that it is rigid as well as flexible. Now, there are certain points in which it is flexible, and in others it is very rigid. So, if we need to amend the Constitution, it has been covered in the Article 368 of Indian Constitution. First of all, let's first see what are the different types of amendments that can be done. First, through simple majority, and through special majority, and the third is through special majority plus ratification of states. Let's first go through the first one. If the Constitution is amended through simple majority, it is not a part of Article 368, but certain other articles like Article 1, that is, for example, if Telangana had to be made, right? So if a new state is being made, then the first part of Constitution deals with that, and we do not need a constitutional amendment for that. That is, we do not need to amend the Constitution under Article 368. Okay, the admission of new states, change of names, official languages, abolition and creation of legislative council. These all are covered in this part. Okay, this can all be done through simple majority. Now, the second part is through special majority. What is the difference between simple majority and special majority? Special majority is more than half. Like if there are 100 people, if 51 accept it, then this is simple majority. On the other hand, special majority means absolute majority, that is 50%, more than 50 and 50, like majority of the total membership plus 2/3 of present, that is an absolute majority plus the majority of 2/3 of the members present and voting. Now, their fundamental rights, DPSPs, and other residuary powers which are not mentioned in first or the third part are covered through this amendment. Now, the third type of amendment that can be done to Indian Constitution is through special majority, that is in Parliament, plus consent of state legislatures. That means which can easily be passed through a simple majority. Now, all the provisions which are related to the federal structure. Now this is very important. Now, what does federal structure means? Federal structure means any provision, any bill, any law which the central government strives to make, or any change that affects the relation between the center and different states is covered through this article. For example, the election of president. Now, the president is elected through a electoral college which consists of elected MLAs of different states. That means there is a relationship between states and the center. Therefore, if this has to be changed, then only and only through consent of the states. That is, as of now there are 29 states. So if 16 states pass, or 15 states pass through it, pass the this amendment, then this constitution amendment still strive to become a new amendment to the constitution. Also, Supreme Court's powers and any of the list in Schedule 7. Now, Schedule 7 is a list in which there are powers between center and the states. So if any of the power of the state needs to be amended, it has to be done with the consent of the states. Of course, representation of states in the parliament, that is Schedule 4. Again, all the different articles in which there is any sort of federal relation between center of the states, or the power of the states is taken away or diminished, this amendment procedure is followed. This is all Article 368. So now through this through this amendment process, we see that of course the constitution is flexible, like through but it can be amended through simple majority, but at the same time, if federal provisions have to be need to be changed, it is very rigid, right? Now there is something called the doctrine of basic structure, which is very unique to the Constitution of India. Now, one of the salient features of Indian Constitution is the separation of powers between different organs of our government, that is between judiciary, executive and legislature. But they have been certain overlapping parts which create a confrontation between, or the tussle between, the judiciary and the legislature. The legislature passes certain laws, but which are not acceptable to the judiciary and which are cut down. The recent example is NJAC. The 99th amendment was struck down by the judiciary. Now, there was similar conditions which existed before. The issue basically always remains the amendability of the constitution. This initially was under the Shankari Prasad case, in which said that the fundamental rights are amendable. But again, in 1967 Golaknath case, it said that fundamentals are non-amendable. Now further it again encapsulated, which came till the Keshwananda Bharti case in 1973, which said that yes, fundamental rights and DPSPs and even preamble is a part of Indian Constitution, but at the same time, if you need to amend any of these articles, then you need to conform to the doctrine of basic structure. But again, what is a basic structure? We shall do that. Now let's just study what are the ingredients of basic structure. First, the supremacy of constitution. That is, whatever laws the legislature can make, but should always conform to the constitution. That is, this constitution is supreme. And of course, separation of power between the three organs of government, unity and integrity of India, right? And of course, the power of judicial review. That is, the Supreme Court is empowered, the High Court is also empowered to assess the kind of legislation that the legislature has passed. So this cannot be taken away from the judiciary. This is also a basic structure of Indian Constitution. Principle of equality, free and fair elections, the secular character of Constitution. These are some of the major points of the basic structure. Now this structure keeps on evolving as certain new points get added to this basic structure, but the only important thing that we need to remember is that anything can be amended, but it should always conform to the basic structure. Now the definition is given by the Supreme Court itself. So it's a very dynamic definition which might change or evolve with the passage of time, with as the Supreme Court thinks like the Constitution should strive to forward. Now let's just go through a few questions that were asked before. Which of the following parts provision of Indian Constitution cannot be amended? First, the preamble to the Constitution, directive principles to state policy, fundamental rights, or judicial review. If we have just covered what the basic structure is. So yes, these three can be amended, but of course, judicial review is a part of basic structure and cannot be amended. So the answer is fourth. Many key features of the Constitution, such as federal structure of the government, provincial autonomy, and a bicameral central legislature, and the principle of separation of powers, are directly taken from the Nehru Report of 1928, the Government of India Act 1919, the Government of India Act 1935, and Indian Act. Now we studied that this forms the bulk of Indian Constitution, and this is the answer, which was described by B.R. Ambedkar as the heart and soul of Indian Constitution. Now, if in the other lectures we will also cover this, the right to equality, right against exploitation, and the right to constitutional remedies. That is Article 32. This article was described as the heart and soul of Indian Constitution by the chairman of the drafting committee, that is Sri B.R. Ambedkar. Now this brings us to the end of this lecture, and in this lecture we had covered how the evolution of Indian Constitution took place and what are the different salient features of Indian Constitution. How is it amendable? How the Constitution is rigid as well as flexible? What are the what composes the basic structure of Indian Constitution? In other lectures, we shall also cover more parts of this. Till then, good luck, work hard, and hit the bullseye. Thank you.